China released a 12-point peace plan on a political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. Despite a year having passed since the Ukraine war started with larger military aid, supplies being shifted into Ukraine, there have been few signs of negotiations despite mediation efforts made by several leaders. On the occasion of the war anniversary, China laid out a 12-point peace plan that warns against nuclear war, especially after Russian President Vladimir Putin signaled to raise the specter of nuclear weapons. The peace plan, apart from highlighting the reduction of strategic and nuclear risks, talks about resolving the humanitarian crisis, respecting sovereignty, protecting civilians and prisoners of war, and facilitating grain export. While Russia welcomed the peace plan as long as the new territorial gains made by Russia are solidified, Ukraine at first rejected the plan unless Russia withdrew its troops till the 1991 border of Ukraine, which includes Crimea. Later, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed some elements of the Chinese proposals and said he planned to meet the Chinese President Xi Jinping. The willingness comes despite the skepticism shown by the West, with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg saying that China did not have credibility since they did not condemn Russia. So what does this mean? Why did China decide to offer to mediate now, and what are the possible implications? China has decided to propose a peace deal due to the escalatory position it could take after the increase of nuclear stockpiles announced by President Putin. Moreover, global inflation and economic challenges are creating instability in the supply chains, especially energy and food shortages. China imports 48% of Ukraine's food produced and grains, the largest food export market of Ukraine, placing it in a good position to mediate. China is one of the few countries trusted by Russia and is also a nuclear state itself. The two countries agreed to a no-limits agreement before the war started. Russia became the largest source of China's crude oil in 2022. Ever since the start of the war, China has maintained a neutral position and voted against UN resolutions that sanctioned Russia. The West and NATO distrust China, especially with US and its allies acknowledging China as the biggest challenge, and distrust and competition in a variety of areas, such as trade wars, the Taiwan issue, and many others. Since NATO countries have been the biggest supplier of military equipment to Ukraine, with Ukraine still expecting to receive fighter jets and more advanced weapon systems, there's a possibility that even if Ukraine's president decides to meet the Chinese president, it would remain under pressure from the West. If China is able to successfully broker a peace deal, it would give it a de facto leadership position, which would make its assertive position challenging for the West to accept. Many analysts believe that Turkey and India could also play a mediatory role. While Turkey has already mediated with no success, India remains a choice for the negotiation of many. Unlike China, India has warm relations with the US and historical ties that it continues to strengthen with Russia. Despite being in China-centric US-led military alliances such as Quad, 60% of Russia's weapon imports go to India. However, like China, India has not only maintained a neutral position, but also increased its crude oil imports from Russia by 22%. Moreover, it has consistently abstained from the UN resolutions on Russia at a time when the war has shot up the prices of food and energy prices and has contributed to mounting inflation. What is important is not who brokers the peace deal, but that the gradual peace process initiates. It is clear that not only a country trusted by Russia will be able to facilitate a peace process. However, the question of the territories annexed by Russia, apart from Crimea, would remain the center point of all future discussions. I'm Usama Nizamani, and this was your Daily Dispatch.